the issue about height and weight and capacity to carry, those regulations were not thrown out until the first Mexican American got on the San Jose City Council.
Who was that?
That was me.
What year was that?
1971. 1971. August of 1971.
And how did you come to get on the city council?
I was appointed by four members of the then existing city council, but the impetus for my appointment for that, putting someone on the city council, came from the Japanese American named Norman Mineta, became famous later on as a congressman and then Secretary of Labor. But he was appointed to be a city councilman. Then he got his own elections and stuff. But then when he ran for mayor, that created a vacancy. But it just so happened that at that time, one of the other members died. In those days, there were 7 members on the San Jose City Council, including the mayor. And when Mineta got elected mayor, that left one vacancy. And of all people, I can't remember who died.
That's what I was going to ask you. I don't remember who passed away, but
the councilman that died,
yes.
So, what were the names of the city council members at the time that you joined? While you're doing some recollecting, I was going to ask Herman. So, were you working with Al, or were you aware of Al at this time?
Yes, I was.
What did you do with Al, or what did you think about what Al was doing at the time?
Well, it was excellent. Actually, there was a movement to get him appointed to the city council, which eventually did happen. But I was involved in those meetings, but I wasn't the instrumental, person or persons pushing that. There were the others, and he eventually did he was appointed, and then someone else, I can't remember, who passed away, and then he became a city council. He ran for it, and got that, and we were elated.
Do you remember the names of some of the people involved in advocating for Al?
Oh my goodness! Yeah. Well, the one that comes really to mind, because he was a very strong leader, was Jose Martinez.
Al,
did you remember who some of these council members were that you joined?
Yes. When the elections of '71 brought in Janet Gray Hayes as a member of the city council. She was elected that previous election of June, in which I ran, and I ran second to her. But then the other members were Janet Gray, Dave Golio, Walter Hayes, Norman Mineta, and Joe Cola. And the 4 members that voted for my appointment was Janet Gray, Dave Golio, Walter Hayes, and Norman. Joe Cola, cantankerous old fogey, he didn't support it. And the relationship was cordial, but not friendly for the term that he served, which was about another 4 years. That's how I first got on the city council, and then a year and a half later, in 1973, I had to run for election.
So Janet Gray Hayes was the only woman on the city council?
Correct. She was elected to the seat that was vacated by the only woman that had ever been on the city council, a very conservative, very right-wing individual from the west side of town. And I can't remember her name right now. Her name was Virginia Schaefer.
At this time of the city council, how was it elected? Was it citywide, or were there districts, or what?
They were citywide. The whole 147 square miles of San Jose was one government, 7 members, all elected at large.
And so did that system of election get people onto the city council from all sections of the city?
I was the first individual elected what we would call east of 13th Street, which was the old Oakland San Jose Highway. But I was the first individual from the whole east side, which is Evergreen, Alum Rock, Central San Jose, Berryessa side of San Jose.
What was the relationship between the public schools and the Mexican community at the time you were involved? Involved?
At that time, when I was in the Chicano Employment Committee, it was not good at all. Because they, number one, from one of the things that they weren't really preparing our people, La Raza, to academically. They were really not. And so I was appointed to join the Affirmative Action Committee at that time. And Jack Brito submitted my name to, I forget who the person was the chair of the Affirmative Action for the San Jose Unified School District. So I accepted and I became a member of that. And so a lot of issues that we were talking about in the Chicano Employment Committee, I would raise those issues in the committee.
What were some of the issues?
Well, some of the issues were the academic, the curriculum. They weren't really preparing our people to college prep. Another one was nothing was talked about in terms of the textbook of the Mexicanos here. And one of the things that was real vocal about is that they would talk about Pancho Villa, 2-3 pages that he was abandoned, and so it was really that, but the main thing was the academic preparation for college and the curriculum and the different classes, and they weren't recruiting the Chicano at that time teachers to teach various classes. That was very, very big.
You were mentioning some of the mentors you had at that time.
At the Chicano Employment Committee, and he was of course he was at San Jose State, was Jose Carrasco, and he was teaching at the Chicano's studies there, and he was very organized, and he used to mentor the whole Chicano committee, especially the executive committee, how to organize, how to present issues, and various strategies he would give us. He was very, very instrumental in that.
You know where he got his training or background?
He got a grant, I believe, and he went to Chicago in the Saul Alinsky School on how to organize, and he was gone for, I don't know, a few months, I guess, and then he came back, and what he learned, he taught us. He would go to the Chicano, and other community organizations would seek his expertise, his leadership.
That's the same Chicago school that Cesar Chavez went to, the Saul Alinsky School of Community Organizing. But there was a time also when there was, in the whole county, the whole Northern California, Bay Area, I should say, there was one individual who was a schoolwoman. He was a member of MAPA, but he wasn't necessarily always a guy that would sit up front and everything else, but he was very interested in education, and his name was Vic Camacho. And he got on the Santa Clara City of Santa Clara, the Santa Clara Unified School District over there. He got appointed, much like the way Ron Gonzalez, or I should say Bob Gonzalez, did in San Francisco. And that's another story of MAPA member. But Vic Camacho was the only individual of Mexican parents who served on a school board, and that was the Santa Clara Unified School District. That later was followed by the appointment of Eddie Alvarez, who I went to school with, and Jose Martinez as two board members in the Eastside Union High School District. Now that Eastside Union High School District is another story, because that is one of the biggest school districts at the time in the state of California. And in a sense, they were the first two Mexican Americans or Chicanos that were appointed to the school board. And from there on, that started to open up more and more opportunities for Mexican Americans, Latinos, Hispanics, Chicanos, whatever you want to call them. But prior to their appointment, the only one that used to really push was the superintendent, which was Frank Piscolini. The interesting thing about the Eastside High School District, 80% of the teachers who came to James Lick, which was the first high school in the district, were from the University of Santa Clara. And they came out of the particular wing of the university that emphasized on Latinos or Mexican American studies. I don't know any more than that, but I do know that without Frank Piscolini as superintendent, very few of our kids would have ever even thought about college. I, for example, started James Lick in '52, and I did not get shuffled off into a vocational training line. In those days, principally, there was academic and vocational. And your assignment of classes depended on which wing or which way you were going to matriculate through the high school, either for vocational studies or academic studies. I went into the academic studies based on whatever test scores I had, etc. And consequently, I got to see, in fact, the Eastside High School District was had one of the very first Mexican or Hispanic teachers in the whole Bay Area. His name was Mark Guerra. It was also one of the first districts to have a Japanese American, but it was the first district that had a Mexican American teacher.
Didn't Mark Guerra go on to some other jobs?
Yes, he did. He happened to have been a registered Republican, and so the Republicans used to promote him. And Mark Guerra continued to support the Hispanic progress and stuff. As he said himself, you had to have representation on all facets of the political spectrum. And he didn't make any apologies for being a believer in the Republican. There were a lot of grievances that he had with Democrats. But, you know, he did speak up on Chicano and supported a lot of the Chicano projects that we wanted supported in.
Was he elected to any offices?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of.
Well, speaking of teachers back in those times, were there any Latino teachers, administrators around at that time?
The only ones that I can remember would be in the college, like I mentioned, was Carrasco, and you had others that were there at the Chicano studies, right?
Valdez?
Yeah, yes.
You and I were talking about Valdez earlier, the one that went to Stanford. Nora Saavedra. One of the biggest pushes in the community also as far as education was concerned was Maxa. The first person, the first director of Maxa in this community, and the one that brought it in was Lino Lopez. He was a great individual. Anyone different from Lino Lopez, I don't think Maxa would have succeeded. But Lino emphasized education, and he also emphasized the expansion of your liberal arts, the thinking. I first heard about Maxa in 1966. At that time, I was in San Jose State. I was working nights as a custodian in an elementary school. Great job, by the way. And I heard about this organization at San Jose State through Student Initiative, Armando Valdez, that's what it was. And it was called Maxa, the Mexican American Community Service Organization, whose organizer here was Lino Lopez. Their office was on Santa Clara Street, just west of King Road. And the building's still there, a little building where the GI Forum eventually took over.
Yes.
But in any case, it was pointed out to me how Maxa was emphasizing education and educational endeavors, etc. And since I wanted to be a teacher, that's why I was going to college to be a high school teacher. I went and applied, and I met Lino Lopez. Interestingly enough, his secretary was a lady by the name of Yaya Martinez. In those days, Jose Martinez's wife. I didn't know Jose Martinez. It was through Yaya that I met Jose. I much preferred knowing Yaya than I did Jose. She was a nice lady. She went on to become an educator herself in junior college. But in those days, that's where I met Nora Saavedra and Armando Valdez and several others that I can't recall right now. But I was assigned, through Lino Lopez, I was assigned to Manpower Community Services. And in those days, the name Manpower was the name of a Department of Labor, U.S. government federally funded program to survey the state of California employment practices, training, aspirations, opportunities, etc. And in this region, because the state was divided into regions, in this region, a man by the name of Albert Piñon was the regional director. The director for Santa Clara County was an individual named Jose Martinez, the heretofore mentioned husband of Yaya Martinez. So I got to go work as the sweeper and picker-upper and bring her up coffee. But in any case, that's where I first started to get a very direct community education.
I wanted to clarify that house you were talking about in Santa Clara, I believe was Martinez, either a realtor or a tax office.
Next to it. Next to it. In the beginning, Maxa started next door to the Martinez real estate office. I think
that'd be the story of Santa Clara and King.
No, it was Santa Clara west of King Road. West of King Road is a little building, it's still there. And then next to that is where the Martinez real estate office was. But the little office is the first place that Maxa started.
So do you have any recollections? He's mentioning Yaya Martinez, Jose Martinez, Lino Lopez, and he mentioned Al Piñon.
Well, Jose Martinez introduced me to Maxa when I arrived here in San Jose, and I was working for Operation Center. And I did meet Lino Lopez, and then I met Monico Amador, and because Jose said, I want you to meet a couple of people. So he took me and I met him individually. I met Jose Lopez first, and then Monico Amador, and that's how I became familiar with Maxa. And then eventually I attended some of the Maxa meetings, and from there, I got involved.
What did Lino Lopez look like, or what was his manner of being?
Well, I wasn't, to me when I first met him, it was just, I met him once and then I saw him in meetings. He was a very nice gentleman, very good. He introduced me. It was a very quick introduction, and then I attended meetings. So I really didn't know him, per se, but he was a good man, very good man, very well spoken of.
Lino basically was a mild-mannered giant, maybe 5'6", but big heart, big brain, big ambition for the Latino Chicano community. The man was dedicated not just to his success, but to the success of all his students that were assigned. And what Maxa was, it was a pot where different individuals such as I came along, and we qualified through San Jose State a grant to Maxa for part of my salary, as well as then as to the agency that I was eventually assigned to, which in this case was Manpower. they also contributed some of my salary to Maxa. But it was Lino's organizing endeavors and some of the staff that he had working to go out and talk to different community, shall we say, organizations or entities, such as school boards or school district offices, to have we, the students that were qualified to go to Maxa, to be able to get employed by the school district, to go to Macy's, to go to Sears, to go to different, depending on what your vocation was in college. Maxa tried to place you in a job where you're going to continue to grow in that training and in that education.
Was Lino Lopez a local person?
No. The best I know is that Lino came from Colorado, Denver.
Did you meet El Piñon in those days?
Not in the early days. When I met Al Piñon is when he was the director of CETA. That's where I really began to know Al Piñon.
What is CETA?
It was the Comprehensive Employment Training Act. The funds were coming from Washington, and then different organizations, nonprofits would apply for funds. One of them was Operation SARE, and one of them was CET. At that time it was OIC, and then they changed their name later on. So everybody would go there and apply for funds.
What's OIC?
Organization, industrial, community, something like that. Yeah. Center. That was run by Russ Tershi. Jose Martinez was the executive director for Operation SED. That's how I became to know Al Piñon. He knew the policies forwards and backwards, but he was a very opinionated person. But I always, recollected him running the organization there, and of course, he was there for a few years.
What do you recall of El Piñon?
Well, technically, I worked for El Piñon, who was the director of Manpower here. But more directly, I worked for Jose Martinez, the assistant regional director and the local Santa Clara County director of Manpower Training Incorporated. At that time, as I said, it was a federally funded program, a public institution. That name was eventually, I guess, incorporated into a privately owned training or school of some sort. But El Piñon, bits and pieces. One, he was a real estate agent, one of the first Latino real estate agents I ever met. And secondly, El Piñon was involved way back in the 40s in an organization called Los Californianos. And they were involved in getting the unemployment, as far as I remember, Social Security and unemployment insurance for non-citizen legal Mexican-American Mexicans who had come here and settled. But interestingly enough, up until 1958, when Governor Pat Brown passed this in Sacramento, or helped pass the law to incorporate Mexican citizens who were legally here as eligible to receive unemployment and Social Security in the federal level. It was those Californios. So that's where we met Bert Corona and Herrera from LA and a lot of the individuals. And he knew Bob Gonzalez, who was later on to be the first supervisor, Mexican-American or Chicano supervisor in San Francisco. But anyway, as I said, bits and pieces about El Piñon. And here, he got appointed the director for Manpower in the region with the support of, at that time, people like Norman Netta and others who, I guess, influenced congressmen in Washington, etc.